My name is David Simon. I used to be a reporter at the Baltimore Sun. I write television now. I worked at the Baltimore Sun about 13 years. I was mostly a police reporter. At some point, I became a highfalutin police reporter, and that they let me do project work. But I was still a police reporter. The joke is I never got promoted. When I heard that the Koch brothers, bless their hearts, were interested in purchasing newspapers, and the Baltimore Sun, my alma mater in particular, I thought, well, that's kind of the last nail in the coffin. There's a lot of damage that's been done to print journalism in the last 15 years. Much of it, 20 years, much of it self-inflicted in the sense of the original sin for American journalism, for print journalism in particular, was going to Wall Street. Was going to listen to analysts who told them, effectively, 20 years ago, you know, if you spend less money, if you reduce your staff, reduce your news haul, reduce your expenses, cover less, you can actually make more money putting out a newspaper. These things are monopolies. You know, what's going to happen? Nobody's going to take your place. Put out a weaker newspaper, and you'll make more money. And it was right in the short term. Wall Street's always right in the short term. In terms of the quarterly profits, in terms of profits over a year or two, they were absolutely right. You could put out a shittier newspaper and make more money, and they did so. But when I heard that the Koch brothers, being as ideological as they are, were now looking to buy the husk of these Tribune company papers, I thought to myself, well, that's the end game. That's the end game. You know, it's not enough for you to lobby government. It's not enough for you to influence elections. You know, there's an awful lot of capital that's already introduced into our electoral process. Newspapers, the fourth estate, are supposed to be outside of that to some extent. And yes, they did abdicate their role, and yes, they have made the mistake of listening to Wall Street over the last 20 years, and there's been a lot that's gone wrong. But ultimately, the only chance that democracy has, if you ask me, is that somebody stands on the outside of some of the excess and the fraud and basically calls foul. That doesn't happen if the newspapers represent a particular ideology. Now, in the case of the Koch brothers, it happens to be very rightist, libertarian. It's not about left or right, it's about the community ultimately being served by the paper being essentially local. I want the reporters and the editors to be of Baltimore. The idea that somebody's going to come in with a political argument and acquire your local newspaper as a means of asserting for that argument, which is clearly their intention, is anathema to what journalism is supposed to be. I would urge everyone to sign the petition sponsored by Working Families against the Koch brothers or anyone else from out of town acquiring your hometown newspaper. You know, you can't have a great city without a great newspaper. They run together.